days of Trump's second term. The White House marking the occasion with a briefing this morning, starting early, calling it the most historic start to a presidency in American history. But you won't hear that from the legacy media. No, no, no. Just 100 days in, and President Trump is facing, quote, relentlessly hostile coverage. That's what Media Research Center says. And they actually quantify it. They watched the coverage and found in their new study that there's an even more harsh media environment than Trump faced in his first term. And that's hard to believe. Take it from me. We'll have more on that. But first, let's go to senior White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich. Jackie.
Hey, Kayleigh, the White House says that the bottom line is people have to have trust in President Trump. But the reviews have been mixed, especially with regard to the economy, which was a big issue that was key to the president's winning campaign. But the fits and starts of the tariff policy have somewhat spooked the markets. The Treasury Secretary said today that that is part of the strategy here. They want some uncertainty to be able to help those negotiations. And the fog will begin to clear when some of these deals roll out. They also said they are very close to reaching a deal on India, which Wall Street is eager to see.
I think India is the most interesting because it opens up the car market finally. You know, there's been 110% tariffs on U.S. car product going into India for a long time. If we go to reciprocal 10% or zero, that opens it up and signals to the market the deals are going to get done. And I predict the market would go up 1,000 points with an India signature whenever that happens.
The White House also needs Congress to deliver the tax cuts extension to get the other pieces of the puzzle in place.
That will be retroactive to January 20th. The other thing that we are looking to add is full expensing for factories. So bring your factory back. You can fully expense the equipment and the building. We will couple that with deregulation, cheap energy, and regulatory certainty, and that will continue to make the U.S. the greatest destination for domestic and foreign investment.
The executive director of the Port of Los Angeles warned consumers could start to see bare shelves, with cargo arrivals from China forecast to reach a 35% decline as early as next week. But the Treasury Secretary said that he has not seen any cause for concern, and many big retailers have pre-ordered. The White House also says Amazon is playing politics by displaying the cost impact of tariffs on the products that they're selling.
This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American.
Asked if there was any love lost between President Trump and Jeff Bezos, the press secretary declined to say, but she did tease ahead to this afternoon. We're going to hear from the president on some changes to the auto tariffs that are set to make things a bit easier for American producers, guys. Kayleigh,
that, of course, ahead of that 6 p.m. rally. Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thanks.
Well, Bill, the media has coverage these 100 days of action relentlessly. And, you know, they are breathlessly waiting for any change in polling numbers. But when you dig below into the crosstabs, there are some really interesting numbers, and they're comparative numbers. So check this out. This is Gallup. Who do you trust to lead the economy? 44% Trump. But look below. Hakeem Jeffries, Schumer, Democratic congressional leaders. Comparatively, President Trump 14 points ahead of the nearest Democrat. And then you flip over to Washington Post. This came out this week. And you find Trump is trusted over congressional Democrats 37 to 30. So the comparative numbers are interesting, but you'd be hard pressed to find them anywhere but here.
Well, good afternoon, by the way, ladies. Good to be back with you.
Great to have you.
To mark the 100 days, I went back 100 days and I pulled the inaugural address from Washington, D.C. I don't know, ladies. I just find some really interesting things in here. He was telling us everything he was going to do in the next 100 days. And I'll just give you a couple examples here, right? I'll declare a national emergency at the border. That happened right away. Right? I don't think we got through the afternoon that day on January 20th that happened. I will send troops to the southern border. I will designate the cartels as a foreign terrorist organization. I will invoke the Aliens Enemy Act of 1798.
There it is.
I mean, we all sat, watched, and listened to it. I don't know anyone who stopped and said, what? The alien? Now we're all aware of it, okay? I mean, he said was again, Scott Bessent said this morning, we will tariff and tax foreign countries to enrich our citizens. So the roadmap was there. All you had to do was listen and follow along. And that and they're sticking to the plan based on as of today.
You just made me think about, we were all there in Washington, D.C., sitting on the set, and this also marks 100 days since Biden pardoned his family members and the January 6th committee, and all of the coverage that was ignored when that happened, rightfully so. I mean, it was Inauguration Day, but nevertheless, never got scrutiny, Harris. And look at this. Trump's second term, 92% negative coverage. We mentioned that, but compare this to Biden, 59% positive. Again, very little mention of those pardons. Trump first term, 89% negative. Quite something.
But remember how distrusted those legacy media are now, and why that 92% may sway a poll a little bit here and there. What matters is how the people voted. So they clearly know that they can't trust the media that lied to them and was complicit in a cover-up by the people around Biden about where he was. He was not sentient enough to be president of the United States. We learned that when? Well, the rest of the world learned it. We knew it at Fox already from Axios at the White House Correspondent Dinner just past weekend. I would say this, be careful what you wish for when you wish for people's downfall. And that's what Democrats are doing. They're really hoping that the president will fail. And the American public is astute enough to know that that means that they want all of us to fail, that they don't care anything about us as citizens. Why would you vote for somebody who's rooting for the president who just came in on a mandate and came in on some big numbers, popularity, all of the battleground states? Why would you say that you want to go against that man when the voters put him there? Because you don't like the voters? Be careful what you wish for.
Be careful indeed. We think about the 100 days, and then I think about looking forward. And I think about something really important I heard from Scott Bessent today. And should this happen, I want you to listen carefully to what he said he thinks could happen throughout this year. If this happens, these tax cuts you're about to hear, I believe this will cement President Trump and the Republican Party and the movement for quite some time among voters. Listen to this.
So it's really a three-legged stool in the economic policy. It's trade, it's tax, and it's deregulations. Speaker Johnson, we had a very good meeting yesterday with something called the Big Six, NEC Director Kevin Hassett, myself, Speaker Johnson, Leader Thune, Committee Chairman Jason Smith, and Senator Crapo. And the tax bill is moving forward. President Trump is also adding the things for working Americans that is talked about earlier: no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, making auto payments deductible. So that will substantially address the affordability crisis.
Emily, that last one, I hadn't been tracking so much. Auto payments deductible. If you get that, plus no tax on tips, plus no tax on overtime, this is a big if. It's a razor thin margin in Congress. But if you get that, that is a legacy defining achievement. I believe if you got all of that, it would put you on the level of perhaps an FDR.
Look, this is sort of a tale of two cities, right? But instead, it's a tale of two voting blocks. And the reality is that obviously the majority of voters, the majority of Americans handily elected President Trump. So when we talk about the media coverage and you talk about these legacy defining, life changing things for Americans, we're always going to see the media either disregarding or failing to acknowledge it. And I want to dig a little deeper into that because I think it really plays into the approval ratings touted by the left, right? So when you look into the media coverage and the state by state analysis of President Trump's approval, you see that, for example, Alabama, still 78% approval. But in swing states too, Michigan, Georgia, well over 50. But when you start looking at those blue states, that's where the plummeting happens. Well, those are the ones that are tied to MSNBC, CNN, and the like. And when you look at those coverage, it's not just that it was 92% negative, you guys. It was that the volume, the lion's share of their coverage was on President Trump and it was negative, and a tiny portion was on Biden and it was super positive. So it's not apples to apples, because imagine being inundated every day with Hitler. And then you look at his administration cohorts. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, 100% negative coverage. And when you go to the Trump voters, Kayleigh, 96% today on the 100th day say they knew voting for him was the right thing to do. 87% say they know his economic policies will lead to a stronger foundation. 45% say, yep, in the interim, it's going to be a little sticky, but we know these tariffs and economic policies will be better in the long run. So to me, keep touting the advantages because the majority of Americans see them positively, and that will be reflected moving forward too.
Lisa, I wanted to save the political angle of this for you because tonight Trump goes to Macomb County in Michigan. It's a huge deal. Politico Playbook did a fascinating write-up on this. Macomb County, he'll be speaking at the same exact venue where President Ronald Reagan said, "I'm a former Democrat and I have to say I didn't leave my party left me." And they say the Reagan Democrat is now a Trump Republican, and Macomb County is the center of that.
Well, I also think it tells you everything about him that this is where he chooses to spend his 100th day with the people of Macomb County, Michigan. How did he spend his 100th day during his first term? With the people of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and he skipped the White House Correspondents' Dinner. He's the only president to not have attended since the inception of that dinner. I think that shows you also why the media hates him. He doesn't play the DC game. This is an outsider. His only constituency is we the people. It's the forgotten men and women who he has been messaging to since 2016, why he won. I also, you talked about digging into the crosstabs. I talked to John McLaughlin, an advisor for President Trump. You know him, a pollster as well. And he said, looking at the Washington Post ABC poll, they only have Trump supporters at 34% in their sample. He won the popular vote by 50%. So how is that poll accurate? So I also have questions about, some bias in some of these polling, that intentional bias, which also correlates with the media bias, that 92% negative media coverage. So I don't know if that's an accurate depiction, but I just think it tells you everything that he wants to spend the day, his 100th day, with the people of Macomb County, Michigan.
I think that's a great point. The forgotten men and women. That's been the cornerstone of the Trump
Exactly.
movement since 2016.
Hey, everyone.